Gospel of Mark, chapter 10, starting with verse 17. Mark 10, 17. As Jesus was starting out on his way to Jerusalem, a man came running up to him. Now, don't be running up to Jesus if you ain't going to be able to handle the whole encounter. The man came running up to him, got down in worship posture. Listen to this, knelt down and asked, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Listen to what Jesus says. You knew this conversation was going to go sideways from the moment Jesus responded. "Yo, why you call me good?" Now, I know some of y'all just want Jesus to say, "Thou should have not have called me good." But Jesus says, "Why do you call me good? Only God is truly good." But to answer your question, you know the commandments. You must not murder. You must not commit adultery. You must not steal. You must not testify falsely. You must not cheat anyone. Honor your father and mother. Teacher, the man, watch this, right? So much stuff. I wish I could sit with y'all sometime in your personal Bible study. I would show little nuggets to you. You already know the man got issues. Because watch this. When he first started, he called him good teacher. Now the man says, "Teacher, okay, so I ain't good no more now?" I always watch people that used to call me pastor, and then all of a sudden they call me Rev. Or they say, "This is my minister." I'm like, okay, I used to be your pastor. You know, that's language shows you where the relationship is. I just taught you something. Watch it when your man or your woman starts calling you different terminology than they once called you. That's a sign, okay? This ain't marriage class. Teacher, the man replied, "I've obeyed all these commandments since I was young." Looking at the man, Jesus felt genuine love for him. If I was writing this, I would write, looking at the man, Jesus felt tough love for him, but genuine love. "There is still one thing you haven't done," he told him. "Go and sell all your possessions and give the money to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come follow me." At this time, the man's face fell. We got stuck a little bit at 8 o'clock. The man's face fell. Maybe the reason why you don't know people is because life has disappointed them so much their face has fallen off and they're no longer identifiable. And he went away sad, for he had many possessions. Jesus looked around and said to his disciples, "How hard is it for the rich to enter the kingdom of God?" This amazed them. I think King James Version says it astounded them. But Jesus said again, "Dear children, it's very hard to enter the kingdom of God." Then Peter began to speak up. "Well, we've given up everything to follow you. I used to have my job at the shipyard. I walked away from that. My wife was working at Verizon. We walked away from that. So what you gonna do? In fact, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of needle." Peter speaks up, verse 26, and says, "Lord," verse 26, y'all. The disciples were astounded. "Then who in the world can be saved?" they asked. Jesus looked at them intently and said, "Humanly speaking, it's impossible, but not with God. Everything is possible with God." Verse 28. "Yes," Jesus replied, "and I assure you that everyone who has given up house or brothers or sisters or mother or father or children or property for my sake and for the good news," watch this, "will receive now in return 100 times as many houses, brothers, sisters, mothers, children, and property, along with persecution. And in the world to come, that person will have eternal life." Here's verse 31. "But many who are the greatest now will be least important then. And those who seem least important now will be the greatest then." Help me with the sermon subject. Would you look at your neighbor real quick and just say, "Neighbor, I got something to tell you. It's not always easy." Look at somebody else and just tell them, "It's not always easy." Father, I pray for anointing that will enable me to be able to share the word of God this day. I claim the authority to preach in the name of Jesus. Amen. What you all might not know is over the last year and a half, many of you might not be aware of this, some of you are, Pastor LJ has had a ministry coach helping to get him ready for the shift. Elder and I have had a ministry coach helping us to get ready for the shift. His ministry coach has been Pastor Jeff from Northern Virginia. My ministry coach has been Dr. Sam Chan. We are in Atlanta, locked into a hotel conference room all day, talking to Dr. Chan. Dr. Chan is trying to help me process through this season. And Elder and the family, we're on a break right now. And Elder and the family have gone to the ladies' room, and left in the conference room is just Dr. Chan and me. I guess Dr. Chan starts talking to me because he can see a look in my eye, Earl, that probably gives him some undercover information about where I really am. Long story short, they have not been able to nail me down on a date. So now that nobody's in the room but Dr. Chan and I, Dr. Chan said, Bishop, it's just you and I in the room now. If you could give me a date today that you feel like God has put in your spirit, what would the date be? Now, I'm thinking it's just me and Dr. Chan talking. So I said, Dr. Chan, you know what? I've actually gone back and looked at when I got called to the church. And literally, fourth Sunday in February 2024 will be 33 years. I said, Jesus served on the earth 33 years, so I just feel like that's the date. Here comes Elder and I'm back in the room. And Dr. Chan says, Elder, good news, I have locked Bishop into a date. I'm like, hold on, Dr. Chan. You started the inquiry with, since it is just me and you in the room. And so as we progress through the conversation, I'm sitting there now with righteous indignation, like, that ain't what I thought you were going to do, Dr. Chan. And I remember him looking at me and saying, Bishop, I have been with you in every major turn of the mount. He said, I still remember us, 2:00 in the morning, looking through the window in an old grocery store, and you saying, I don't think we can afford this, Dr. Chan. He's saying, look at what God has done. I said, yeah, Dr. Chan. He said, Bishop, I hate to tell you this, but this next step will not be easy. What do you do, y'all, when what God is calling you to is so uncertain and so intimidating that you've actually been tricked into believing that the will of God is easy? I'm gonna let y'all in on a personal secret. Almost everything I've ever tried to do for God in 33 years happened like that. As crazy as it is, every time, Cliff, there's been a need, something supernatural would happen. We go in the first building, we owe the contractor $100,000, the contractor decides to forgive the debt. Easy. Didn't have to raise any money. Easy. We need land for the first building. A lady that I had never met before, the elder and I knew was a senior citizen. We would bring water and put it on her porch whenever the storm would come. I didn't know she owned 21 acres of land. And when the city turned us down for adding on to the old building, she sent for me. I drove down a dirt lane to her house. She said, "You're the preacher that always puts the water on my front porch." I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "How would you like 21 acres to build a church on?" I said, "Ma'am, nobody in Bells Mill owns 21 acres anymore." She says, "Yes, there's still one 21-acre parcel." I said, "Where?" She says, "Where my house sits." I said, "For real?" The developer pulls up in the driveway while I'm in the house talking to her, ready to lowball her on buying her 21 acres so he can build a neighborhood on it. And she says, "Preacher, I'm going to take you at your word." She said, "I just want two things." I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "I always wanted a house with an indoor bathroom. Can you make it happen?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "And I want to leave my grandchildren something in the bank. Can you make it happen?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "Well, then my land is yours." She came out on the porch and she told the developer, she said, "You can turn your truck around. I've sold the land now. I sold it to him. They're going to build a church on it." Easy. When we got ready to come in this building, the assessed value on the building was $8 million. We couldn't afford that and build it out. Tom Hasty, who's on our budget committee, is a banker. He said, "Bishop, I just did some research and found out that the building is owned by somebody in Los Angeles, California, and it's in foreclosure right now. We're going to offer them $3 million. I said, "Tom, we can't offer these people $3 million. The building is appraised at $8.5 million. He said, "Yeah." He said, "Bishop, you know what? You stick to preaching. I got the banking." He said, and this was, y'all got to understand, we sent them a fax and said, "We've already got our financing and we want to offer you $3 million. He said, "And we're going to give you until 5 o'clock today to respond to our offer or we take the offer off the table." I'm like, "Tom, don't put that in there. We ain't got nowhere else to go." He said, "Bishop, let me tell you what's going to happen. At about 4:45, the fax machine is going to ring. There's going to be a fax coming out." He said, "Now they're going to wait till the last minute because they know we on the East Coast waiting for them." He said, "But at 4:45, they're going to respond to our offer. At 4:45, they said, we will not accept anything that doesn't begin with a 4. He said, "Okay, ain't no problem. We'll go 399. He said, "Because we got to negotiate." Here's what's so amazing. In 24 hours, we had signed a contract with people that I had never seen before and were in the midst of buying this building. We had been qualified for $12 million from the bank. So now we got leftover money. We went to the bank and said, "Well, we want to start a church in Elizabeth City, North Carolina. There's an old furniture store for sale down there. Can we go buy that?" They said, "We don't care what you do as long as you pay your mortgage every month." So we go down there and start building 2 churches at the same time in 2 different states. Easy. Elder's favorite singer is Lionel Richie. I felt his spirit right there. Easy like Sunday morning. And I kind of identify with the man in the story because everything God has ever asked me to do has been easy. Last Sunday, I was sitting in Orlando watching the stream, and Pastor LJ peeped my whole card and made me start crying like a baby. I'm going to try to get through this part of the sermon without crying. Made me start crying like a baby sitting watching the stream last week because he said, "Y'all, for 30 years, Bishop has talked about me in the sermon, so today I'm going to talk about him." So I sat up in the chair and he said, "I can imagine the conversation. When God came to him, Bishop said, 'Let me tell you something. Been there 33 years. I ain't stole your money. I ain't messed with your women. I've been married to the same woman, and I didn't try to leave to go somewhere big.'" Well, I can't say that. I did try to leave. It just didn't work out. God shut it down every time I tried to leave. And I'm like the man in the story. Look at what I've done. Can you imagine, like he said last Sunday, that conversation when God says, "Yeah, you've done good. But if you really want to please me, there's one more thing." Woo! One more thing. I need you to believe me enough to walk away on top. Ooh. I'm going to let y'all in on a clear secret. Christian, I got up wavering this morning. I'm like, God, it's down to 4 weeks. While I'm watching a 30 for 30 that I've recorded on Reggie White. Reggie White has just won the Super Bowl. And the guys on the team bring the trophy over to him. And they said, man, it took you 29 years. Don't just hold it. Run around the stadium with it. Take a victory lap. They show Reggie White running literally around the football stadium holding the Super Bowl trophy up. And God says, son, I'm giving you the privilege. Before you leave, hold the trophy up and run around and just celebrate what I've been able to do through your life. How do you handle it when God asks you to do something that is more than you really are willing to do? You know what it does? First of all, it causes you to check yourself. Because I'm ashamed that I'm this caught up when it was never mine in the first place. Ooh, God, I just hit you hard right there. See, we think the whole story is talking about houses, cars, people. No, 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 don't get it twisted. He's reminding the man that I think you've allowed some of these auxiliary affections to become equal with who I am in your life. And I'll let no one but me be number one. So to prove that I am number one, go sell what you have and then come follow me. Ooh. It's as if God was saying to me, Lori, I know you think I'm number one, but I'm not sure that there aren't days in which me and Mount Lebanon are even. So to prove who I really am in your life, let this go. Ooh. He's right. He said last Sunday, I can only imagine that Bishop's face fell. Yes, it did. I argued with God. I got mad at God. I was through with God. I was frustrated with God. I started to call other pastors' names and say, watch this, y'all. Here it is, elder. I said, you ain't asked him to leave. You ain't asked him to leave. You letting him stay. Y'all want to know the answer? God said, what I have in store for you ain't what I got in store for them. Woo, woo, woo. That thing broke me down. He says, son, what I'm trying to do for you is so much bigger than what I'm trying to do for them. For unto whom much is given, much is required. We've inverted that theologically and think that it means when God gives you a lot, then he's going to require a lot. No, I've now learned it opposite. When God requires a lot, he's planning to give a lot. You just missed my shout cue. What I've learned is that sometimes God will take you through something because he's requiring something of you before he releases what he has for you to make sure you qualify and are capable of handling what God ultimately wants to release to you. He doesn't always give it to you first. We've misappropriated this in the scripture. Listen to what he says. The same way you measure it out is the way I'll measure measure it back. Watch what old folks used to say. If you make one step, God will make two. He's always demanded that we do something first. Seek ye first the kingdom and its righteousness, and then I'll add. We've always wanted God to do his part, and then we do ours. So let me tell you something. I've now reconciled that what God is getting ready to do in my life must be so awesome that he's saying, I want to make sure that you got your priorities right. So will you release this so I can release that? And how do you handle releasing this when you have no idea what that really is? Oh, I wish I had a worshiping church right there. You ought to look at somebody and tell them, I'm giving up what I know to receive what I've never seen before. I'm giving up what I'm comfortable with to receive what I've never even imagined. Woo. He tells the man, sacrifice this, then come talk to me. Can I tell y'all something? Here's what's so amazing. I'm rambling a little bit because I'm really trying to help bring you somewhere so you can identify the text in a clearer way. You know what I said to God? I said, God, you do know giving up the church means a redefinition of my compensation. I said, just want to let you know, I'm about to take a serious pay cut. God ain't say nothing. I wanted him to say, Sister Vanessa, I'm like, can you say something, God? Say something. You know, I just told you, brother got bills and obligations. You ain't say nothing. You were blabbermouth at first, talking about give up the houses, the lands, and the sisters and the brothers. Now you ain't saying jack. 2 days later, God came back to me. But this is how he came back to me. My phone rings. It's Pastor John Faison from Nashville, Tennessee. John always calls. This is how I answer the phone. Hello, he says, Your Grace. That's how John answers the phone. I said, hey, man, what's going on? He said, well, you know I'm getting married. He's already asked me to do his wedding. I said, no problem. I got your wedding. He said, but, you know, Bishop, first Sunday in March is my 12th year as the pastor here in Tennessee. And for the last 5 years, I've been asking you to come preach for me, and you always have an excuse. He said, I figure now since fourth Sunday in February, you out. You probably got some time now. So can you come first Sunday in March and preach for me, celebrate 12 years? I said, yeah, I got that. Hang up the phone, and I'm telling you, almost right behind it, here comes Apostolic Faith Church from Chicago calling, saying, Bishop, ever since you came to our leadership conference, everybody in the church is talking about Bishop Kim Brown, and we want to know, can you come second Sunday in March and preach for pastor's anniversary? Now, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I don't need but one sermon. I'm going to do just like Minister Earl, and then we bless the name of Jesus. The same thing I preach in Nashville, I'm preaching in Chicago. I learned this from Earl. Earl like roll that track. Hey, I got it. I ain't mad at you. That's what I'm going to do. So then right after that, Bishop Rosie O'Neill called. I said, hey, Bishop, is Elder there? I said, yeah. She said, I need to speak to Elder. And so she speaks to Elder and says, Elder, I need you to come to South Carolina and help do something with the church. And then when I hung up the phone, God said, boy, I'm about to give you a pay raise. I know y'all can't shout right there. I shout by myself. Ain't no problem. God said, you think I'm getting ready to give you a pay cut, boy? I don't go backwards. He said, by the time I finish with you, you will be doing better after you let something go than you were when you tried to hold it on, because what John is going to give you and what they're going to give you in Chicago going to be more than you got in. I need you to let somebody around you know you can never go bad letting something go for God, baby. You can never go wrong letting something go for God. Oh my God, y'all, I'm burning my time. I got to go. So watch this. It's not going to be easy, but here's how you help it to become easy. I'm going to run through them real quick. I ain't got time to give them to you. I got to go sign books. I'm going to give you all 4. Number 1, you got to remember the why. You got to remember the why. Look at somebody else and tell them, you got to remember the why. Earl, why are they saying, how is Earl sitting over there on the side, letting Desmond lead praise and worship? I watched it today when they put the camera on you, Earl's hands up. The only reason they tripping is because they don't know the why. Remember the why. It's right there in the text. Listen to it. Yes, Jesus replied, and I assure you that everyone who has given up, here it is, house or brothers or sisters or mother or father or children or property, comma, watch this, Pastor Furby, here it is, for my sake and for the good news. Okay, see what I've learned is the reason why a whole lot of people can't let something go is because they were not doing it for the right reason in the first place. Because if you were doing it for the glory of God, and if you were doing it for the good news, then when God tells you it's time, you got to remember why you were doing it in the first place. I love y'all. I've already made in my mind, 4th Sunday in February, I'm going to drop the mic and say Mamba out, because I was never doing it for you in the first place. I was doing it for the man that woke me up this morning. I was doing it for the man that healed me when I had cancer. I was doing it for the man that let me bump into her in the jewelry store. It was never about y'all. I love y'all, but I ain't preaching for y'all. I ain't serving for y'all. I'm not sacrificing for y'all. I'm sacrificing because he's been good to me. He's been better than me than I ever expected him to be. He's already done more in my life than I ever anticipated he could do. And since the mount belongs to him, he has a right to say, I'm ready to change how I'm operating. Woo! I had to remind myself, Keith, why I've been doing this. He said, son, you've been doing this for me. This is about my good news. This is about my kingdom. These ain't your people, they my people. I just allowed you to lead them for 33 years. And rather than you being depressed, you better be glad I held back cancer 10 years ago, because they could have had a funeral 10 years ago. But by the grace of God, you only missed 4 Sundays, and you back up in there preaching like you were preaching when you were 20 years old, and you mad because I'm asking you to change? Check your neighbor, just ask him, why you doing it? Why you raising your hands on Sunday? Why you come out in the cold on the first Sunday in February? Why you standing up when nobody else is standing up? Why you wave your hand whether they tell you to wave it or not? I'm not doing it for you, I'm doing it because I know my why. My why is because his grace is everlasting. My why is because by his stripes I am healed. My why is because he promised never to leave me or forsake me. My why is because he supplies my need. Don't play me right here. Don't play me right here. If you somebody in here, you know you alive by grace, I dare you to jump up and tell somebody, I should be dead by now. I should be dead by now. But God didn't let it happen. God didn't let the spell of the witch work. God didn't let my enemies overcome me. God didn't let the cancer take me out. God didn't let me lose my mind. God didn't let me go down the drain. It's by the grace of God. I can't worry about who's going to stay and who's going to live. I'm here because I know my why. My why. My why. Can I show y'all something? I didn't give y'all this in presentations, so I'm probably going to mess it up. But we miss little nuances in the text. So presentations, stay right there real quick. Verse 29 presentation. Listen to what he says. I assure you that anyone who has given up, y'all ready? Dr. Ella comes to 8 o'clock worship, my English teacher. House. House. Singular. Let's keep reading. Go to verse 30. I don't know where it is. I got to walk us there. So presentation, can you go to verse 30? We'll receive now in return 100 times as many houses. You only asked me to give up a house. The other day I'm meditating, getting ready for the day. God said, I ain't asked you to do nothing but give up a house, one church. He said, but if you got faith, by the time I finish paying you back, oh God, I better watch my voice. I felt some old school rise up there. I'll be giving you back houses. I said, God, I don't understand. He said, there are pastors around the world that have been waiting for you to just embrace being a bishop more than being a pastor, that are looking for a spiritual father. But I have not released them to you yet because you could not be their spiritual father and try to hold on to the house. But if you will let me have the house, I promise you I will give you houses in return. I need somebody to understand, if it's on him, it's on me. If it's on him, it's on me. If it's on him, it's on me, because we connected. So you need to look at somebody and tell them, whatever I've lost or given up for God, I know the why. God is going to get me so much more. However I cry, watch this. Oh God, I don't know why God wants me to go here. If you've had 5 years that you've cried, think about how many years of joy you're going to have. If you had 6 months where you were sick, think about how many years of health you're going to have. If you've had all this that you had to endure. Remember the why. I had to check myself, Wallace. When he gave me the sermon, I had to preach it to myself. He said, I just want you to remember the why. Why you been doing this? Were you doing it for the amens or doing it for the good news? Because if you're doing it for the title, you're doing it for the wrong reason. You were supposed to be doing it because you're just glad I'm using your former reefer smoking self. Don't get so sanctified that you forget when you were not sanctified. I gotta go. Remember the why. Number 2, recalculate the worth. Recalculate the worth. Yeah. You know what I've learned? Keith, this is crazy. Cars are my issue. I see Brother Mike Pulley over there. He knows this. Cars are my issue. When I couldn't afford to drive what I wanted, I was always wanting to get a new car. Now, I can afford to drive what I want. And Lord knows, every time I get in at a model that's paid off with 105,000 miles in it, that thing riding better every day. I cleaned it up the other day, went and got me some new car smell and put in there. I promise you I had just driven it off the showroom floor. The seat, 7 years old now, so it fits. It's high where it needs to be and low where it needs to be. I drop in that, whoo, yeah, this is my seat. When I could not afford to buy new cars, I was always trying to get a new car. Now that I can afford to buy a new car, oh, they calling me. They get these emails from the dealership all the time. Good afternoon, Kim Brown. We want to let you know that used car prices are at an all-time high, and we want to know, are you interested in selling your 2016 Nissan Armada? And I'd be like, yeah, and then I get in that seat. Ooh, ooh. You know why? Things that are important to me at 62 were not important to me at 52. Okay. Mike, true story. So a couple of weeks ago, Elder called me. She said, where you at? I said, I'm at the Range Rover dealership. She said, what you doing? I said, baby, I've been faithful. I just feel like I can get myself a going away gift. Elder always says, well, if the only thing I got to worry about with this fool is him buying a car, go buy a car, because it could be he going by a woman. Or worse, he could be going, okay, I'm gonna leave it alone. So I'm in the Range Rover dealership, and I'm sitting there, and the guy has started to build my car. And we on the thing, and he's sitting there, and I started asking him some questions. Because you know, at the Nissan store, I'm known as Mr. Dan's Bishop. You know, so I be riding down Battlefield Boulevard. Notice my car need to be inspected. So, oh shoot, my car need to be inspected. I call the service department and say, hey, this is Bishop. I need to get my car inspected. They said, where you at, Bishop? I said, I'm down the street. They said, well, bring the car on in. We'll have a newer model for you to drive. I just pull up, and I love this because it strokes the ego, y'all, excuse me. When all the service guys runs out with the little clip pad because they don't know me because they new to the dealership. So they come out and they say, sir, can I help you? I said, no, you can't help me. Dan told me just drop my car off, that y'all got a car over there waiting for me. And then Brian come out and say, hey, Bishop, I got you. You parked right out there. I like that. I ain't gonna tell y'all no lie, I like that. So I'm in the Range Rover dealership. I said, hey man, is the owner here? He said, no. I said, well, I ain't used to dealing with you. I said, no offense, man, I'm used to dealing with the man that owned the dealership, the man whose name is out there. He said, well, I said, well, what do y'all do if my car need to be inspected? He said, you call and make an appointment. I said, I got to make an appointment? He said, yeah. I said, oh man, I ain't used to making no appointment. He said, what do you do? I said, well, you see that Armada out there? I said, I just pull up on the lot in that car, and people come running out with keys for a new car. He said, well, we don't do that here. I said, I thought this was a Range Rover dealership. That's a Nissan. He said, yeah, but you must have a different kind of relationship there. I said, aha. Watch this, y'all. True story. I love mess around. I live in the country, so I got a Ford pickup truck. So Earl, the other day, I called the dealership, the Nissan dealership. I'm driving a Ford. I called the Nissan dealership. Said, hey, Brian, my truck needs an inspection. He said, a Ford? I said, yeah. He said, where you at? I said, coming down Battlefield Boulevard. He said, bring it on in, Bishop. I pulled in the thing in my Ford at the Nissan dealership. Pulled right on into place. Sure did. They came out. They gave me a Nissan car. I got in the car and drove away. Dog, if Brian didn't have the nerve to call me and say, Bishop, do you know there's a recall on your truck? I said, no. He said, well, what we gonna do is we gonna drive it down to the Ford dealership for you, and we gonna get the recall fixed, and then we gonna bring it back to our dealership and wash it. I asked the Range Rover guy, I said, hey man, if my Ford truck needs some work done on it, can I bring my Ford truck up here and y'all take it to the Ford dealer? He said, oh no, we don't do that. We only service cars that you brought here. I said, well, you can click off the computer. He said, where you going? I said, man, I don't need no Range Rover. I need that old Nissan because I understand the worth of that relation. Oh, you just missed it. You ought to look at somebody and tell them there's a whole lot of stuff that's more valuable than just a new car and a new house. There's a whole lot of stuff. Let me tell you, you can have a Ferrari, but if you have a stroke, you can't drive it. Your health is worth more than that Ferrari. Your health is worth more than, be grateful you can stand up today. Be thankful you can raise your hand. Okay, I'm gone. That man needed to recalculate the worth. He thought the value was in houses and property. No, the value is in your relationship with Christ. I know I couldn't get a whole lot of amens because we're in this prosperity demographic. Remember the why, recalculate the worth. Number 3, resist the wicked. Thank you, daughter. Everybody jumps up with verse 30 until they get to the B part. You will receive now in return 100 times as many houses, brothers, sisters, mothers, children, and property, along with persecution. Along with persecution. Please understand, when you start to give up something and start to move your relationship with God to another level, witches are not going to be happy. Warlocks are going to be defiant, and root workers are going to be trying to cast spells because they don't want to see you move into what God has for you, emotionally, mentally, or physically. And so what they'll do is they'll start to come against you. You got to be able to understand, I ain't responding to you. This is just confirmation that I must be moving in the way that God wants me to move, because if I was not doing something, the enemy wouldn't be coming against me so hard. So what I've learned is I got to keep my mind focused, got to keep my eyes straight, and understand I'm pressing towards a mark. Vince, I'm not worried about what anybody says. I'm not worried about what the witches, warlocks, the planners, and the plotters are doing. I'm not concerned about that, because he that began a good work in me is about to finish what he started. Do I have about 8 people that'll jump up and say, whatever the enemy is coming against me with, I'm able to handle it. No weapon formed. I gotta go. Thank y'all for letting me do my first week of therapy. Here it is. Remember the why, recalculate the worth, resist the wicked, and finally, record the wonder. Daughter, watch this. I've learned I don't have to fight the enemy. All I got to do is say, enemy, take out your notepad and your pencil. You're going to want to write this down. When you see what God does, you're going to want to have documentation recorded to show you what the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords is about to do. Am I the only one in here that feels as much as this next season is uncertain, in the back of your spirit you know God is up to something? Am I the only one in here that you get insulted when they come and ask you, am I going or are you going to stay? You like, why would I want to leave when God is getting ready to do something brand new? You have lost your mind. Write it down. I prophesy over this house that this building will not be large enough. I prophesy over this house. Young people, Generation X and Generation Z, millennials are going to come running from all over the nation. I declare the next generation will move to Hampton Roads because of this church, not because of a job at the shipyard. They're going to want to be where this church is. Record the wonder. You know what, Pastor LJ, they're trying to figure out where I'm going with the scriptural reference. They think it's going to be the scriptural reference, daughter, that says, now in this life, I will give you 100-fold. That ain't the wonder. The wonder is really verse 31. Many who are the greatest right now, by the time, son, God finishes with you, they will not be the greatest anymore. And many who are least important now will become the greatest then. Here's your old daddy's prophesied to you. Watch the folks who have not invited you to preach in this season, because you are the least of them, who will come asking you to preach when God confirms that this was the will of God. If they couldn't dance with you when you didn't have your confidence, don't dance with them when God starts to blow it up. Dance with the girls who brought you to the dance, because that's the way preachers are. They ain't calling right now, but when they see that there's a word in your mouth for the next generation, they're gonna try to pimp you and me. They're gonna come through me trying to get to you. And God already gave me the scripture. God already gave me the scripture. When they call me, I'm gonna be like the people in the Bible who came to the parents of the child. And the parents say, he's old enough to speak for himself. Don't be mad because there are preachers that no longer talk to you because you were the one that got the opportunity. Just guard your heart so that when they ask you to come preach, you following the will of God. Because many who are the greatest now will be least important then. And those who seem least important now will be the greatest then. I promise you that's the word of God. I'm out of time, y'all. If you're in this room and you desire to accept, I know I've already done the invitation, I'm gonna do it real quick. If you're in this room and you desire to accept Jesus Christ as your Savior, rededicate your life to Christ, you wanna become a part of this church, you desire prayer, you reminded me of this, my daughter right there, who works in the advancement office at Norfolk State. I looked at you and I thought about my university, our university. I graduated from Norfolk State. Thank you, Lordy. I don't remember what number I was in the graduating class because it was so high, probably was no reason to even check. But if the Lord lets me live until June, they tell me that the little boy that graduated, thank you, Lordy, has the potential, it's up to the board, to be the rector of the board. Those who were least then, we got to go, but before you go, can you just do this real quick? It's called the Great Reversal. I'm telling you, we're getting ready to go into a season where those of us that feel less than will be the greatest. And those who feel like they're the greatest about to become the least. So if you're in this room and you desire to accept Jesus Christ as your Savior, rededicate your life to Christ, become a part of this church family, you simply want prayer, or you desire to volunteer, I'm gonna ask you to come stand right now. Now, if you're one of the 20 that came earlier, you don't have to come back again. This is not your moment. But if there's anyone else, would you come real quick and stand? Maybe the word of God pierced you in the heart and you want to make that decision. This is your moment. Come stand right here. I'm going to sign books, y'all. Nobody rushed me. I don't know who bought these two. Somebody bought these and said, give them away. So if you're a young mother in here, I saw your hand. Come here. I saw your hand. It's already signed. Already signed. Already signed. Yep. Already signed. Now unto him. Oh, somebody coming to make a decision? All right. Bless y'all, man. I'm gonna tell you what's so crazy. Every time I've seen you tweet on the ship, every time, I don't care what time it was, when I was scrolling, I don't know if it's Twitter or Instagram, whatever it is, and I would see you, I would literally call your name to God. I mean, that ain't no fluff. Let me tell you what's gonna happen. Come here, son. Dr. Keisha's home. That's what happens when the First Lady got small children. Oh, she working. That's what happens when the First Lady works. She need to work too. I see what y'all getting ready to do with the house. Tell her work. Keisha, you watching, you need to work overtime. But I'm gonna tell you, the key to this next season in your elevation in your career is right there. It's crazy. God showed me that the other day, and all he's been telling me to do, just continue to pray for him. Just continue to pray. Nothing is wrong, y'all, so don't be taking out, oh God, that ain't what I'm saying. I just know, you know that God is trying to do something significant. And it's going something, some kind of a way. I don't know what it is. So you just need to go hug him. I'm going to sign books. Now unto him who is able to keep us from falling, present us faultless before the throne of God. To the only Almighty God be glory and majesty, dominion and power. I declare we blessed in the city, blessed in the field, blessed when we come, blessed when we go in Jesus' name.